All right, we're going to be going in just a couple minutes. Waiting on anyone to join in the Discord. I'm going to post the link in here one more time for anyone who may have come here from another location. We're going to be teaching basic modeling in Blender. Nothing too fancy. But if you want to follow along and ask questions, just follow that link, and in the live stream voice, you can go ahead and bother me the whole way through. Just makes it a little easier for me if I have some folks to talk to along the way. But with that said, I'm going to start up right about now. And I'm just kind of gonna go ahead. Okay, so I gotta find a way to mute this Twitch. I'm hearing echo. Okay. Please tell me in Discord or in chat if anything's sort of not sounding all right. There's a one-man mod team here, so we're going to try to get things going just as well as we can. Hi there. This is me looking at wrestling news. I'm Calder. I'm going to be teaching y'all modeling just like we did last time, but we're going to be a little more focused and maybe cut a little bit of fat this time around. If you did watch the old VOD, this is going to go over kind of the same things, but also go over sort of best practices, and this time with more of a focus on character modeling and organic modeling. And I'll try to mention how things are different with hard surface modeling and things in environmental modeling as I'm doing this. But I think the lessons you learn here can pretty much be placed upon most things if you're learning modeling. And a lot of what I'm sort of putting this class over is the stuff that I wish that I knew when I was doing this in the past. Put that, maybe we can make that a little smaller so everyone can just focus in on what's here. Blender is a very wonderful program. We're using Blender because not only because honestly at this point I probably enjoy Blender more than Maya as a whole, but because Blender is free and it's a very wonderful program. Unlike a lot of things where I feel like you don't want to start with any sort of special settings at all, Blender, say for the camera and the light, which we will not be using, gives you exactly what you need when we start. It's this little cube. This cube is great. This cube is pretty much the basis of everything I make, and we'll go into that later on. But before we do that, let's do some basic sort of how you move around Blender. I'm assuming in this case that most people are going to be using a mouse with a middle mouse button. That is how most navigation I think is done in Blender. You can actually set those settings in, I think when you first start up, it'll ask you how you want to sort of control things. I think the way they have things set up is pretty good on the whole, so if you want to sort of tool around with that, you can, but honestly, the middle mouse button is how you rotate. You hold shift, that's how you track. You can move the camera along a sort of select path. You can sort of turn it on this, scroll up to move around, scroll in to do that. Right mouse button moves your little 3D cursor, which is useful, but we're not going to be talking too much about it because we're not going to be spawning too many new different objects or recentering origin points or anything like that. This is a very sort of basic beginner modeling and best practices thing. And the other thing is, if you don't want to use Blender in the future, you want to go straight to Maya, most of the stuff here is going to translate just fine. First things first, when we make a model, this is already a model, but it will tell us all of the things that we want to know about a model. I should say when Blender starts you out, it starts you out in what's called object mode. You'll see it up here, object mode. Object mode is where we add various different types of objects. Let's say I wanted to add this sphere for some reason. It'll just put it in here. There it is. We can add a different square. We can add all sorts of things. This is totally worth looking into, and we will actually be going into different parts of these later on in our tutorials later in the week, specifically with animation. But for right now, really, we're just going to be concerned with planes and cubes, and in this case, just the cube. And there is a reason for that. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in saying that, like, most of my models will start from just this cube. But in order to really understand this cube and really understand modeling, we're gonna actually take a closer look at it. So when you have the cube selected, and you can tell it's selected when it has this little orange highlighting around it, that's when we know we have our cube selected. You can also see up here in the scene collection. Press tab, and that goes into edit mode. We're gonna zoom in a little bit and look at our cube a little closer. All right, so look at our cube. We see these little dots. And if I select 2 of these dots, we can see that there's this yellow line. And if we click this, we can see that there's a whole face being selected. What these are verts. The little points are verts, and they are vertices in 3D space. These lines are edges, and edges are just a line between 2 vertices. And faces are the space between all of your vertices and lines. And what we have right here is a quad. And it's what you're going to want to pretty much be working with all the time, no matter what, when you're, actually I shouldn't say that because I'm about to tell you wins no matter what. When you're a 3D modeler, a quad is what you want most of the time. And I'm going to tell you what quads, tris, and n-gons are right now. So, as I just said, let me bring out my wonderful pencil tool here. We got circle, 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 circle. This makes a quad. And we'll just sort of add the little back things in here anyway. And quads are good. Quads are four-sided. Quads help us with animation and moving things like organic geometry. Stuff that moves probably needs to deform the mesh a little bit. And quads are really good for that. Why are quads really good for that? Because the way almost every graphics renderer actually takes in something isn't in a quad, but quads can always be separated into 2 tris. No matter what, if you make a quad, you're going to make a tri. You're basically just implying it, but you're not really going to be putting it in there. And that's good. You don't need to be doing all those tris. And to have that sort of amount of tris there means that you'll always have sort of a squishy room for the renderer to sort of do what it wants within there. And tris are, for the most part, also fine. Tris allow us to pretty much make the lowest amount of space possible when we make a vertice. I'll make a tri after this just to show you. But first, tri, quad. And then the one thing you never ever want, ever, ever, never ever, is something like this, which would be called an n-gon. An n-gon is when you have more than 4 vertices to a side, and it creates a polygon with n amount of vertices, so an n-gon. Like, it could also be 6 vertices, now it'd still be an n-gon, just n amount. Think of it that way. And these are bad. These are when the computer has a hard time actually figuring out where to put everything. It sometimes works well in static meshes, things that don't move, but it's also just worse practice, just not a good thing. For the most part, like, your renderer will try to break this down, but it'll have multiple different ways it could break it down. It could break it down like that. It could break it down like that. It could break it down like that. Either way, you're giving it a hard time where it probably doesn't want to have a hard time. And that's just by and large not something you want to do, right? You want to, if you've made games, you know errors are going to happen, but you want to make as little amount of errors possible in those situations. You can also see that, like, once you start having n-gons, they spread everywhere else. It's like a horrible little disease. You don't want n-gons. N-gons are bad. And so right now we have a nice little cube, and it's all made of quads. If we want to make tris out of that, we would go to our little thing here, select this little vert, drag it down to this one, wait till it's highlighted, and there we go. Oh, well, sometimes the knife tool is a little finicky. Sorry about that, y'all. Get him. Actually, this is going to be an n-gon because I didn't click it right on, but there we go. Try. And if I move the vertice here, we'll see that only this portion moves while the other portion is static. Now if we do this way, it'll move the whole part of the quad and it'll sort of smoothly move within there. I'm not going to even teach you how to make an n-gon because there's no reason you should ever want to. But those are n-gons, tris, and quads. And really, if there's anything you should take away from this, it's just never ever to have an n-gon. You don't want an n-gon. They're bad. Anyways, a few camera things before we go ahead and do our next sort of practice part of this. So if you press Alt at any point while you're moving the camera around with the middle mouse button, it'll lock in to a certain what's it called? Cardinal direction. So this is like straight on from the Y axis. This is straight on from the X axis. This is straight on from the Z axis at the top. This is really good when you're trying to do more precision modeling. You can see like that's why there's a wonderful grid here and everything like that. We will be using this a lot, but at the current moment, just like remember you press Alt in order to do that, and it'll do that. And if you want to get out, just move it and it'll move right out of it. While we're doing that, one of the cool things about Blender is if you want another perspective, I'm just going to do this twice so you really see how to do it because it sometimes can be a pain. You see this little area right here, this tiny little like blip. It's like semicircle over here. You just pull out from there and you can pull out another perspective. To tell you the truth, I don't love this perspective, and you can just drag it right out. So if I wanted to pull it from this side, I can do it the same way. And I'm going to quickly show you why that's a good thing after I sort of get rid of this one. All right, so we're going to go back out of edit mode, press tab so you're back in object mode. If you don't want to press tab, you can just go here, object mode, and we're going to add some stuff. And when I started class before, I told y'all that I wanted to have everyone download a few Gokus. I'll tell you why I chose Goku in a little bit, but essentially I have a number of Gokus I've given everyone. It should be on our Discord. N-gon, B-gon, you are right. So we have our Gokus. We have our back Goku, front Goku, side Goku, angle Goku. One we definitely need is a side Goku. But for right now, since we're actually going to be loading all of them, we want them to be the same size. We're just going to keep adding. And it's going to keep adding them right at that origin point. You see that? And don't worry that I moved it a little bit. It's not a big deal for y'all. It's just going to be there. So there's our side Goku. I'm going to go back in here. Sorry, I put this in a bit of an annoying place. Front Goku. And just keep adding them until we have them all in. And I'll hope before you guys have even noticed you've downloaded and you realize that I've chosen the correct type of Goku, and I've chosen a child Goku. Far better than the adult Goku. Far happier. Far better lad. Never really gets that upset. Oh, this is the wrong folder. Got too distracted talking about Gokus. Okay, we're going to add one more, and that'll be the rest of our Gokus. And the reason why we're adding images as planes will be pretty clear in just a little bit. Last one, Dropbox, Cab, class examples, Gokus, and I think we got front Goku, side Goku, angle Goku, and back Goku. Okay, good. So these aren't showing up right now, but that's just because I think they're textured objects. It's really all you have to do to make them show up. Press on this little thing over here. These are essentially just settings that dictate whether or not a certain object is rendered with a texture or as a normal, just a simple gray normal. For the most part, you'll probably, when you're doing your basic blockouts, you'll just be working within these little simple gray normals, what everything is right now. But for right now, and since it's not going to be that intensive, we're going to just make our Gokus sort of show up by pressing in this viewport shading model right here. And while we're doing that, we're going to select all of our Gokus. If you want to select things that aren't in order in a hierarchy, just control click for each one of them. We're going to go into our locked on perspective thing. Right now we're in the X perspective. We're just going to drag them up. After, oh wait, well, I should tell you about the transform tool. Okay, so scale, transform, rotate, and move. Most part, we'll just be using these three. Scale is obviously what it does. It makes things bigger. If you want to make things bigger vertically, you can do that. If you want to make things big horizontally, do that. But since we want to scale things uniformly, we're going to just pull out on the side. We're going to make a fairly big Goku. There he is. Proud savior of the earth. And once he's a sizable enough Goku, we're just going to put him right on this Y axis. I'm going to get close so we can make sure. You don't have to be like right on the axis, but the better you get and the closer you get to these axes, the easier it's going to be for you moving forward. So now that we have our back Goku, we don't actually need to worry about our front Goku right now. We're going to worry about front Goku when we do certain modeling later on. And I'll show you why we're not using front Goku very shortly. So we're just going to click on this little eyeball over here. Just make it disappear for right now. Put our back Goku. Move him a little further down here just to make our space a little easier. Angle Goku, again, this is when we're getting into face modeling and hair modeling. We're not going to need Angle Goku at this exact moment, so we're also going to let him disappear for right now. Goodbye, Angle Goku, and your cocky smile. And we're going to get our side Goku. Our side Goku, we want to be on the side, so we're going to take this. If we press Shift, we can actually rotate sort of on more locked angles. But an easier way to do that is we can go to our transform menus. It's for some reason, it shouldn't be like that. Usually you can just click in, but you saw the tab I just clicked in. Go to our rotation. Let me make sure. Sometimes I get mixed up on the axes to rotate it. That's my bad. And it looks like that's not the right one. We want to do it on the Z axis. Sorry. And we get our side Goku like this. All right. You know what? Actually, might even flip him. I think that'll be fine. Okay. I'm going to move Goku over here. And that's our Gokus for right now. And what that means, if we look at Goku this direction, we have a Goku looks like when he's got his back facing us, and we have this one, we have Goku when he's actually on his side. So we have two perspectives of Goku to work with right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to, once again, once we have our Goku set up, we're going to go to our cube. And since we're still in object mode, once we have our cube, we're going to go into edit mode. And our cube is pretty big right now. It doesn't need to be this big. Let's lock into one direction. Let's lock into our x-axis. You can do that. Basically, just lock into the axis that'll have it behind them. You might have it on a different axis. It truthfully does not matter right now. With just a little bit of troubleshooting, you'll be able to fix all that. Another way you can do that, this little compass over here, you click it. It'll lock into the axis you want. It's pretty cool. But yeah, we're going to scale this down. Same way we scaled Goku up, we scale this down. And we're going to move him roughly to about the foot. Most modelers would say you should probably not start with the foot. I'm weird. I think shoes are cool when I'm modeling, so I like to start with stuff I like. But for this particular guy, we're going to start down here with the foot, just going to transform him down and slowly get him to a point that he sort of matches up with Goku's foot down here. Once he's there, we're going to go into edit mode. Usually there's a way you can set certain objects to this and certain objects not to shaded. I'm pretty sure it's actually in here. So let me just do that and see if I can do that really quick for y'all so we can save everyone some trouble. Truth be told, I don't usually model like this. This is how I learned how to model, and it helped me out a lot. But eventually, like, you'll kind of get an idea of how to move something around, no matter what. Like, you'll kind of just know how to make things work better in 3D space. But this is a very useful trick to know, in terms of just, like, how can I get something to look the way I want, or just sort of lock onto the properties that I want it to be at? this is a pretty easy way to just do 2-scale modeling and not have to worry too much about getting everything particularly right every time. So just like, this is a no fret way of doing things. Anyways, now that we've got this cube, we're not going to fuss too much about it. We're going to scale it down, and since we're in object mode, we're going to go into edit mode. We're going to click on this, and what that does is it lets us select things behind it. We're just going to scoot this down and just try to slowly match sort of where his foot is. We're not going to worry about being too precise. We're not making a perfect Goku tonight. But we are making a low poly Goku, and I'm going to show you the power of low poly modeling at first instead of immediately sort of going there. And we're just going to go to like a good part of the foot that where we would imagine there would sort of be some sort of deformation or some sort of toe discrepancy. Now that we have this that actually matches up here, we're going to go back here, and we're actually going to move it forward. And you might think, oh, but it'll ruin this. No, we can just move it here, move it down. We're going to move our model here up because that wasn't quite on the right axis, but that's fine. You'll see that it's still matched up here, and now we're matched up here. And what we can do is now make sure that it's sort of flush on both sides. We'll grab the vertices on the other side over here again, and I'm going to just pull it up and match his sort of toe arch here. For the most part, it's okay if this happens, what I'm doing right here. All I'm really doing is just kind of matching the profile here. If there's discrepancies between the two, it's something that we can revisit later, but we're getting a decent shape, right? Oh, actually maybe not. Keep in mind, this is like kind of what happens. You'll never find like, you actually can find models that are exactly the same sometimes, one with a profile that fits exactly on the other one. If you don't, that's fine. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, you're a modeler, you'll figure out ways to do that. Anyways, since these aren't fitting correctly, it seems like Goku has a little more arch on his other one, we'll just keep going. Let's keep going with this back one. The back is probably going to give us the exact sort of profile we want, which will make things just a little bit easier to go back to later on. It's like part of the reason I chose this, to tell you to be honest. It's because, I don't know, things go wrong when you're modeling, so get used to it. But in a good way. It doesn't get too bad. Let's just make sure our thing isn't completely screwed up. Nope, it's fine. Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. So we can see that it's down here. We can probably move this down and just get everything a little bit closer. And now that we've done this, we're going to have to extrude a face. What does that mean? We go into this. You can either press all of these together, and sort of you'll see that the face highlights. Or you can select the face here, and you can either extrude region by pressing this, or you can just press E, and E will bring up our extrusion. If you want it to extrude along an axis, you can press X or Y or Z, and it'll extrude along those axes explicitly. In this case, we actually want it to go along the Y axis if yours is set up this way. And we'll get back into this view. And I know this might seem a little bit like locked in. You're doing stuff in 3D. You probably don't want to be doing stuff like this in 3D, but that's okay. We'll get used to it. And we'll sort of go up again and just sort of match things out. And we'll just keep doing this along the way. For the most part, I don't think our model would have feet like this. It'd probably be facing forward. Goku is extremely like, got his toes pointing all the way out in the other direction, but it looks nice for animation. So we just keep extruding. And let's imagine his ankle is probably around here-ish. We're going to top these verts down, bring these up, and bring those in. And if you like are getting sort of caught up in the fuss and how quickly I'm moving, that's fine. It's okay. This isn't like a perfectly one-to-one model. I'm going to tell you the things that are important in case like you feel in case you get to a point where you're a little bit worried, or like there are things that can mess up your modeling along the way, it's going to be n-gons, and it's going to be little things that might mess up things for animation along the line. But for right now, having a sort of blocky, weird model isn't that bad. And I'll show you ways to make it less blocky along the way too. So we're going to extrude again. I'm going to just sort of finish up his ankle here. Here we go. There we go. There we go. Now we got a goofy, but an actual foot, and that's fine. Feet are pretty fun. Something we can do, feet usually are pretty much flat on the ground. You can grab all of those vertices down there, making sure that you still have this selected so you can grab the stuff behind it. Make sure that everything's good here. Okay, just got a message really quick. Sorry, y'all. My sister just had a baby, so I gotta keep on the line every now and then. So you can just bring this down and try to make it level right here, and that'll flatten out any of your vertices that like might not be perfect. And this obviously isn't the perfect foot, but it's a foot. We're gonna keep going from here, and our goal isn't to make something perfect quite yet. It's to make something perfect down the line. So right here, we're going to want to select these two faces because we're going to probably want a little bit more definition along the leg, right? Not just one tube, maybe two tubes, so we can actually have multiple verts that go in there and sort of define what it looks like. Since these verts, just want to hammer it in, these are the things that kind of actually give things depth, make things less tubular, put things in a sort of perspective that look more realistic. Like moving them individually is kind of what we want to do. If you're worried about like polygonal grouping and stuff like that, don't worry too much. There are modifiers we can add along the way. And really, like, if you're just learning, you'll learn better poly grouping. It's not the thing you want to just be a pro at the first time, but you'll get to be a pro at it as you keep working. Okay, so we're gonna go press the wrong button. Oh man, why did it do that? I have no idea why it did that, so we're gonna just go back into material preview. Looks like it's selecting that. All right, I'm gonna bring this up on the axis it's actually already in. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna make kind of two sets of extrusions along the ankle here. And if not three, no, two is fine. The reason we're doing that is because once we go into animation, you're gonna want something that has a little bit more room to deform as we're kind of getting there. I should have done that because you guys should know what I'm doing when I do that. Basically, I'm gonna do those three sets of extrusions than one larger one. But it's easier for something, and I think you guys, if you've ever like held a hose or something like that, something with like more perforations along a certain side can bend a little bit better than something with only one. So if we make multiple sort of linear cuts along an ankle or an elbow or an armpit or a neck or various, the parts of our body that move, then when we go in to animate them, we'll have an easier time making sure that the computer will move them in a way that looks natural, and it won't warp your mesh, and it won't make your polygonal structure just look strange when it happens. Anyways, let's go back into this. This is just a simple scale. It'll usually scale out from whatever sort of things you're using. I should stick to verts. Verts are usually easier to work with rather than edges. If we just scale here, it'll do it along the edge there, and you can kind of see how it's matching that. Let's get as close as we can. And then we'll move it up, move it over. Moving's over here. There's a lot of shortcuts for this. This one's G, R, S, and T. We're not going to be using T a lot because I like to have mine a little bit separate, and T sort of combines them. But we'll just kind of get it over here to his leg. Anyways, let's keep going. We can go back into this, and we can actually still extrude from here now that we have all four of these selected. We'll press E, and we'll just go up. We'll find roughly where his knee is, which is probably around here, right? And we're going to pull in a little bit. We're going to pull this around. And again, if it's not perfect, it's not perfect, but it's not the end of the world. It's something we can go back and fix very easily. And there, you know what, I'm gonna go a little lower, make another extrusion, just like we did with the ankle. Make another extrusion, and we'll have a nice little knee spot here. That way, when we go back to the knee later on, when we're animating these things, again, it'll take an area that will often be moving a lot, and it won't cause too much polygonal sort of deformation when we go in there. Anyways, press E again, and we're going to go up to the hip. Now, Goku here, his little anime boy, we can see, isn't showing his butt. Modeling butts is really fun, and you should know this. But the other thing is, if we don't see exactly where the hip is, we're just going to have to guess where the hip is, essentially. We're not going to be adding all of his clothes where all of his clothes go at the moment. We're going to pretty much just make a rough body shape out of this. So the way that his flaps kind of go over the mesh here, we're not going to be approaching. Again, beginner stuff. Clothes modeling can be a little bit different. This is not that wouldn't necessarily be what I would consider a sort of beginner thing. I wonder if we can just do this. No, we can't. I wanted to see if we could select this just to be a wireframe like we did the other one. Anyways, bring that in. Find a good spot where you think that it'll kind of make sense to start making hips. And we'll start doing that soon. And since we're already here, let's make this flush. And we'll bring it up. And we'll bring this one a little bit over. And that's going to be our leg for right now. Usually when I get to doing like a full limb, that for me is a time where I think it's a good idea to maybe go in and look at our other side. In which case, I might actually have realized that what I've done here is, since his leg was sort of made like that, kind of approaching it in a way. Yeah, I see the issue here. Goku has got his feet going way out here. So if this is getting a little bit strange, it's okay. I think we can resolve this fairly easily just by moving him over here and realizing that Goku has feet that sort of splay outwards for whatever reason. I forgot the word for that, or the phrase for that, but that's fine. Let's take these, sort of push him in, and his ankle will already sort of be in motion. This is not necessarily something you want as a modeler. As a modeler, you'll quickly learn about things like A-pose and T-pose, which essentially just allow you, an animator or a modeler, to later go in and make sure that every limb is in an easily resettable pose, so that when you're kind of working with it later on down the line, you don't have to worry about something not going back into place the way it should. But that's for later on. That's for future us to worry about, not us of right now. And what we can do is, since this isn't going to necessarily affect our other rigs, we're just going to fatten everything up a little bit. Let's bring him further in this way. We're going to bring this up over here. This guy goes over there. We're just going to kind of connect the dots here, right? Follow along and just match the points where things would sort of make sense. Until we get to this little point right here, which is, again, fine. We're not getting a one-to-one match, but we're just trying to get something that sort of works more along the scale of what we want. So here, here, and it's a pretty fat leg, but he's got pretty fat pants. We'll get back to it later on. Anyways, let's move. That's not a normal ankle, so we're going to move him in a little bit. Trying to use our little coordinates here so it doesn't move around too much. Sort of stays close to where we want things to be. I'm going to move this down here. And we're getting closer to what we want. A lot of modeling is sort of tweaking until things gets to that right position. So if something doesn't immediately look great, don't worry. the easiest way you can change that is just spending a little time on it. And as things are already sort of fixing up around here to getting to a more normal leg, so we can kind of see this on its own looks a little bit better. But if we bring it back in here, it still looks just fine, right? That looks pretty much just like what we had before, which is good. It still sort of fits that profile. Oh man, thank God I got some water. I always forget that this stuff, you talk a lot and you end up sort of, man, you end up getting parched. If I'm going too fast, please let me know in Discord. I don't want to leave anyone in the dust. But let's see. Starting right here, I'm going to make sure our little Goku has a nice little butt. He's got a nice little figure. We're going to probably, yeah. So in terms of getting his gi properly done here, we're just not. We're just going to kind of bring in our hips up and sort of start to match stuff around here. This is a thing I like to do, and it's worked well with my characters. This isn't necessarily something that always works out. But since we already have these two sort of separate columns, we can start to make a hip that sort of functions within there and creates a little bit of a gap between the thigh. And what that is good for is when we're sort of separating and moving our legs in separate portionalities, we'll have some visible movement between these spaces. We'll be able to kind of see when things aren't like connected to each other, which is good. We don't want things to always look connected to each other. Anyways, so with that and that there, we're probably going to get up to around where his hips would be, right? Like, let's say this might be the top of his hip. Let's say right here, realizing that little anime boy Goku has a little bit of strange proportions. This is like right above his hip. What I would say in these sort of circumstances, I might later on down the line add another subdivision here. But because we just want to get our model kind of in here and not have to worry too much, we're just going to kind of keep going along the way. And if you're worried about not doing the other leg, don't worry. I'll show you fairly quickly how to add things via symmetry into Blender. Sometimes it's a little funny for me. I'm sure there are better methods, but again, Blender isn't necessarily like my first gal I took the dance in terms of 3D modeling. It's just the one that I'm currently enjoying the most. I'm just gonna do a little bit of scrunches to make things a little less tube man. But okay, we got these things here. That's pretty good. All right. So this would be one point where I would probably say like, I think this looks all right, but what would this look like with symmetry? So mesh, we can usually try using symmetrize. Symmetrize can be a little bit finicky at some points. I think we're going to want to do it along the Z axis. Sometimes it'll make things just absolutely disappear. Sometimes it'll make things show up incorrectly like that. I should say before I do this, I think I pressed a button I didn't tell everyone. Press A, that'll select all of your vertices. Every single thing you got in here. And so when we go into symmetrize, mesh, symmetrize, it'll actually know what it wants to sort of symmetrize along. So what I usually do, because I'm a dummy, is end up sort of messing around with each one of these until I find exactly which one of them makes sense. I don't recommend this. I recommend being smarter than me, but eventually you'll find something that is essentially doing the thing that you want to do. So we're doing y to negative y. Let's try y to positive y. That's actually pretty much what we want, but it looks like it's sort of doing it along a different axis than what we would have wanted, which makes me think that it might have something to do with our 3D cursor. Yeah, that's our renderer. We don't need to worry about that. So 3D cursor stuff can be a little silly. Yeah, I see right now. So our origin point is weird. Object set origin. We're going to do origin to 3D cursor, and that might make things work a little bit better. So your origin point in 3D modeling is essentially where everything is sort of anchored to. It is, if I were rotating this, it would rotate along, well, not when I'm rotating it like that, but if I'm rotating it in here, it'll rotate along this point, right? It won't rotate along any other point. What that means is it's also kind of where, if we were to symmetrize, usually, it would try to symmetrize from those points. So like along that axis. Origin point stuff is not something you will necessarily immediately have to know when you're modeling, but it definitely helps. Definitely helps. So let's see if this fixes it up. And it sure did! There we go. We got our 2 legs. Let's make sure that it didn't completely put the mesh together. We're just going to select our faces and see if we can move this boy. Okay, so it's a little bit stuck together, but that's okay. Looks like it made a division in here. What that means is this was a little bit too close to the line. Let me just move them out a little bit. Once again, mesh, symmetrize, there we go. Now we got our 2 legs. Little Goku got his little legs, and things look a lot better. And God, I almost wish I chose a different side Goku there. Oh wow, is side Goku actually selected right now? It looks like it. Looks like somewhere along the line I might have deleted side Goku. Well, don't worry about that. We'll fix that by just literally re-importing it. So, add images planes, Dropbox. Well, you guys probably don't need to do the same thing I did to get to there, obviously. And we'll add our side Goku back in. And we'll just do that. We'll rotate him back to another 180. We're going to put him back over here. And since we already kind of know what we want to do, let's put him along this and then scale him up. And just sort of find close to where we were on this. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect on this because obviously he was way taller. But we just want to kind of get back to where we were. And this might be close enough, at least for now. If we need to use our side reference again, well, you know what we can do is just, how are these two going to look together? Push him back. And clearly he's a little too big right now. So let's make him a little smaller. And that'll be fine for now. I don't want to waste too much time getting this to an exact measurement. I think that would just not be fun. So here we do. We got his legs. We got a little Goku in here. What can we do to match them together? So we're gonna merge some vertices. Actually, there are a couple things we could do, and I'm gonna show you each one of them. So this is one of my favorite tricks that fellow New Orleans game dev organizer, Ben, taught me, is that if you ever don't know like the hotkey to something, just press F3. F3 will bring up this handy little menu. Oh, I just saw the thing in Twitch. I'm sorry. For sure good, wouldn't you just mimic the dimensions of Bakpoku? Oh yeah, totally. That is a way smarter way to do that. Thank you. So anyways, I'm going to do that right after I look for bridge edge loops here. And that's how you can kind of make a plane between two, anything like that. While we do that, we're going to take the excellent advice of Armandez here. Thank you, Armandez. We're going to just probably look at the two scales of this. 6.726. Well, I guess that's fine too. Close enough on a decimal scale. Blink. And now our side Goku is exactly the same again. Great job. Shit. Sometimes you just sort of forget things like that. Thank you. If I had any sort of like sticker or something like that, I would give Armandez a special sticker for being rad. Oh man. Anyways, as you can see, this would bridge together these two loops. which is pretty useful for what we want to do. What we also can do, though, is if we don't want to go that direction, let's get back into our mesh. We can delete this face, and we can actually join by these vertices. Merging vertices is, I think, probably one of the most important things you can do as a modeler. It makes everything simple. These two vertices, we can put them together. We press M, and let's do it at center. And now these 2 points are welded together in 3D space. Again, at center, and that's good. All right. So from here, what we can do is we can, I think, so I always have like a moment where I have to think a little bit when I do hips, because I've ended up doing them so many different ways. But I think basically what we can do is probably just set them together this way. Oh yeah, no. Okay, we can't. We can either bring this up and in. We can extrude from here, or yeah, that's what we'll do. I forgot. Anyways, grab each one of these, extrude. We're gonna extrude the faces, and that's gonna seem really strange and stupid, but then you'll see how to make things work a lot easier for you. Now that we have all of these in this weird, horrible mesh, flatten it, and we can bring it down. And while this won't be exactly where we want it to be, we can kind of move it into place. In fact, let's make it exactly where we want it to be. First, we have to make sure that I didn't already bring that up. There we go. Now, select them all again. Press extrude, and we'll just go straight up. And once we're straight up, we're going to go back into this. We're going to flatten it. If it's not perfect, don't worry. The wonderful thing about Symmetrize, the thing I just showed you, is that we can go back to it at any point. We can resymmetrize our mesh, and we can get it to look just as perfectly symmetrical as we want. It looks like that there might be some drifting on Goku here. Again, if you're like a little bit off model, don't get too upset. Don't fret too much. It just happens. You can be perfectly on model. You can do that. But at the same time, you don't have to. I ain't the cops. I won't get you for it. If we want to give his butt a little extra definition, though, what we can do again is take our edges, push them down, and now we kind of have a butt zone. And you know, Goku works hard. I bet you he's pretty proud of his butt. At least, like, he's probably taken a fierce blow from some of the many villains he's faced. And, like, when he got hit into whatever giant rock face, he might have landed on his butt. And at the point that he worked on it, we should now, you know, give him a good butt so that he can feel appreciated for it. So we're going to go up again, just do the same thing. Right there. It looks like there's a little bit of issue here, but I wouldn't worry too much. Again, just going to get it to roughly the same spot, and we're going to symmetrize this later. So, looks like there's a little bit. Let's look at the front polys here. I don't know what happened here. That is very strange. So, oh, I see. So this was selected when we were doing that. That is some of the problems with having that on. That's going to select through everything. Where if you have it off, it only selects those things. Can extrude again. There's our butt again. Bring it down again. Sort of make it flush. Bring it over here. There's a little Goku butt. Check out the front. Front's mostly okay. Check out the back. Okay, it's good. So, you want to give him a little bit of an ass. Grab these little verts. You know, just give him a little bit of an ass. What I've learned about making ass in video games is you always want too much, never too little. It turns out, as much as like you may not want to say it. Our asses are very expressive. They're very important to, I guess, how we walk and how things look. And if you go like too little on the ass because you're I don't know, you feel conservative or something, it'll actually kind of pay for it later on. It makes other parts of modeling more difficult, oddly enough. So I like to give my characters a little bit more junk in the trunk when I can. So just remember, good to have butt. All I'm doing right now is just playing with some polys just to sort of get things where we want. But we can see now that we kind of have a nice little stout leg for our boy Goku. He looking tough. All right. If we want to completely stay on model, let's cinch up the waist a little bit. And honestly, from here, since I don't worry about being too much on model, I'm just going to actually move it over here. It doesn't matter if it's perfect. We're just going to get here. Remember, we're actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move our plane because it looks like that would be the base of his neck right here. If things don't get in the perfect spot, whatever. You know what? Akira Toriyama already made the perfect Goku. We're going to make the second perfect Goku. The penultimate Goku. We're going to bring it in. Bring it up. Once again, select everything when we do this so we can just save ourselves some time. Bring it up. And it looks like this mesh has a little bit of, it's like where his little rope is. If we want to get that rope with a little extra definition, we can do what we did before with extrusions. Bring it up. Oh, it says connecting to chat. I'm just making sure that everything is going fine on the stream. If there is a problem, please let me know. Bring it in. And since the belt is pretty sort of defined, we're going to do just some normal, non-organic, just straight up and down bring-ins. So let's bring it all the way to the top here. Bring it just a little lower. And bring it up one more time. And from here, we'll space it back out to get to that little like cloth right here. All right. And that is us getting past the ass. Good job, everyone, on getting past the ass. What we're going to have to probably do now is start to worry about where our elbows are. Which brings up something that I knew was actually going to be an issue, but hopefully, in the way that we've done this, will be a fairly easy one to show. So, as you can see, we have we have two sort of loop cuts here. We have two subdivisions here that sort of allow us to play with his ass, right? Allow us to make his ass a little bit more rounded. It gives us depth. But we don't have it on this side, mostly because for the most part, our legs on this side, unless we're getting to real anatomical stuff, you don't have to worry too much about that. But in this case, we probably want to, because we're going to be adding some arms. What you can do, go to your loop cut tool, and you can see how it sort of highlights where you can add a subdivision. So subdivision is just somewhere where it'll go all the way around and make a cut so that you're going to retain the sort of poly integrity that you had before. You'll still have the same sort of, mesh structure. You won't have to worry about having n-gons or anything like that. And honestly, it looks like this is just fine. We're going to add that in. Why does this matter? Well, as you can see on our side here, and wow, we did pretty good. His arms are a little bit further back in his chest. Yeah, this lesson will be archived. Definitely. I think we just pretty much, I think it automatically archives for the first, 24 hours. If not, yeah, it should definitely be archived, at least on Twitch. For YouTube, I'll probably have to go in and do some stuff, but if we'll just take the Twitch recording and just re-record it, I'll make sure everything gets there. Anyways, with that said, now that we have our new sort of mesh here, this is the first time I've ever done an anime character while doing 3D modeling, and it feels like I'm really passing some sort of like kid milestone of like draw your favorite anime character and then make them into your own manga or whatever. This is a good dumb nerd moment for me. So anyways, let's bring it right up to his elbow over here. We're gonna pull it back a little bit. Goku kind of pushed his shoulders back. I'm just actually gonna match the mesh a little bit here. Before we do that, let's do that. So, ignoring the sort of rope on his gi, we can get to that later on. Let's make sure our mesh sort of is a little bit closer in line with how Goku sort of works in this in the front. So, we'll just keep sort of grabbing these polygons, and I'll show you some fun tricks with a lot of this later on. And later on will be very soon, actually, so look forward to it. And we're just gonna try to maintain the sort of rigid area here, but we're just gonna cinch it in. And we're gonna just kind of, since right here is when he sort of starts puffing his chest back out, bring that up. Puff his chest just a little bit further out, bring this a little bit further up, and that's going to be how we're going to be doing his chest. Let's keep going on this side when we're making his chest, because I think we pretty much have his back profile done. Again, as we go up, we can add more subdivisions, but since we're doing low poly, let's just go to the critical spots. Let's go right beneath his elbow, and we're going to move this a little further back, and we're going to move this pretty much to the base of his elbow. See if we can get both of these, and I think we have, just so we don't mess up our sort of poly grouping on both sides. And there. I think that'll be good. All right. I might take like a small break in a little bit just to grab another water. But here we have Goku's chest. It seems like we have one bit here that won't necessarily make a lot of sense. Let's bring that forward. But basically, we're starting to get Goku's shape, right? I was actually kind of worried that this wouldn't work out, to tell you the truth. It's been a while since I've modeled this way. So we're going to do it like this. And we're going to just go right above his little arm extrusion, just sort of almost make this a shoulder hole. And I'm going to go over here. And I think since his chest would probably be further up, we're going to actually mess with our grouping a little bit. Do something a little bit more like that, while also sort of following the back. And while the back, we're not going to like get pound for pound right. We want to kind of follow the rhythm that's here. You see how like there is a moment where the back sort of stretches out in front of him, like right here and then up to there. That's all we're really trying to focus on. And we'll do our last set of extrusions. Whoopsie. I don't know why I did that way. This way, here, and let's bring everything in. So this actually stays a little further back, but these two definitely come in closer, right? And that'll be where our neck probably starts. And so far, there's a little boy. No arms, but look, we got good legs. We got pretty good posture. It definitely already has a little bit of personality. You can thank Akira Toriyama for that. There's a big part of me that wanted to do a car. I don't know if you guys ever seen like all the cool cars that dude draws, but you should look up just mechanical drawings by Akira Toriyama. He rules. I don't know. I've been on a little bit of a watch Dragon Ball again kick as quarantine rolls on. But okay, so we have our thing. We have what will probably be where we extrude our arms. Luckily, Goku's arms are pretty simple. We're not going to actually have to add too many subdivisions. There are things we can do, though. If we want to have, you see how there's like a little bit of a sleeve here? there's multiple ways we can approach this. We're going to just go on one side again. We mostly brought this other side up so we can sort of have a good idea of how things are shaping up. It's important to be able to, you know, see that. I wonder, okay, so if you do this, you press, these things up here are your symmetry cues. So you see if I press that, it's going to take out the symmetrical value on the other side. Sometimes it gets a little bit messed up the more you work, and you're not like perfectly symmetrical. So if we do Y symmetry only, then it's going to, you know, build out in the same way, as we can see. These tools are pretty important and they're going to cut down on a lot of time, but our symmetrize tool does that just as well. Actually, a little bit worse. It's probably more important to be able to see it as you go along. But let's get back into here. Looks like we may have made him a little tall. So let's do that. I kind of like that more, to tell you the truth. It may not like match with our left side Goku, but it mostly matches. Actually, for a brief second, I'm gonna go grab some water because my voice is starting to get to me. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So we got our Goku back. We got all this. I'm gonna actually maybe go against what I would normally do in this situation, mostly to show y'all how to do a certain thing. So this tool, the insert faces tool, seemed like magic to me at first. So what it does is it takes any quad and it just puts a quad in the middle of it and surrounds it by quads, which rules until you realize actually it's just this tool. It's just extrude, but instead of like bringing it outward, it's just bringing it inward and sort of not moving it along any axis. So you can see we get the exact same results by doing that. It really like doesn't do that much, to tell you the truth, but I mean, I still use it all the time. I just think it's kind of funny. I don't know, like I remember when I first found out about this tool, when I was kind of going between both Maya and Blender. I have way more experience in Maya, but I gravitate more and more towards Blender. I thought to myself like, oh man, that's so smart, wow. And then I realized like, nah, you all you had to do is just extrude and you got the same tool. But with that said, let's use this tool because sometimes it just helps us visualize a little bit and like think about how this arm is probably going to leave. So we can kind of see the shape here, right? Over there, there's a little arc there. Let's make that arc. Looking at this and sort of trying to match it. And we'll go here and we'll do this. And since there's a little bit of something at the top, and it looks like the bottom parts of these arms aren't too far down, it makes me like kind of think that we might even want to just follow this entirely and then extrude from here, because we can see how there's like a little bit more of a shape and a definition there. In which case, that's fine. We already made it, so why don't we just do it? We can just grab these two, and we can extrude. And now we have the beginnings of Goku's shoulder. And for right now, let's go back into this, pull it together, and it won't look perfect yet, but look, still got quads, we're still doing the right things. We'll get to where it looks better. again, I think that almost anyone could be a good 3D modeler, at least low poly, because the only thing it takes to really get a model looking good is just time. Just the time to sit there and sort of find where you want things to go and set those sort of expectations and be able to navigate and not get frustrated. So if you are getting frustrated, like, don't worry. You start out getting frustrated, and then you get less frustrated, and then things just kind of work. That is a wonderful, wonderful moment. Anyways, let's match up his arm now. It looks like we're a little bit high, so we're going to try to find this little bump here. We might even just go down and hit this bump, like right here, and hit this bump here, and then bring this bump in. And what this will do is it'll give us an elbow and a shoulder. And as we said before, when we have shoulders and things like that, it never hurts. Just give us a free spare subdivision over here, so when we're moving things around with our model, the mesh doesn't necessarily deform as harshly. But really, you don't ever need too many more than one. So let's go here, and I think this will be fine. It'll extrude down. In fact, I think we can probably bring it in a little closer on this. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, so let's extrude. And what I'm going to do this time is, just so we can maintain having two of these sets, I can see the two faces I think I'd like to use, right? I see these two right here. And let's just extrude them out. And what's going to happen is it's actually going to... Oh, good. Sometimes it comes a little funky. Don't worry if it does. Things just get funky sometimes. Oh, it did get funky, because I had that selected. Whoopsie. Extrude. Okay, good. And we'll bring it in. Bring it down. And we'll grab our verts. And we'll pull it back. And really, like, a lot of the stuff that I want to keep hammering in is stuff we're doing good right now, which is all of this. Even if it's blocky, even if it's strange, even if things don't look necessarily right. Buddy, the fact that it's all quads, like, I was so terrible about that when I was learning modeling the first time. Like, just making sure that you have quads and not tris is going to make your life so much easier. And it's going to make your life easier not only in animation, which is what I keep harping on, it's going to make it way easier when you go into UV mapping, which is going to, I think, be my next course. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a great UV mapper. But I'm going to try my best to kind of give you all, at least to the level I'm at there. But, alright, so we got our Gokus. We're going to keep moving along. And whatever, it's going to go into the mesh a little bit. Don't worry too much about that. Again, nothing when you model is set in stone. With that said, a thing you should always do in 3D modeling is save. All the time. Things get corrupted pretty easily, especially in Maya. So make sure you save. Make sure you save often. You never know when things crash, and you don't want to lose all your time and effort due to that. I'm sure there's probably like a Blender autosave plugin. One of the great things about Blender, again, is like, there's so many great things about Blender, but one of the very best things about Blender is the amount of plugins there is, and we might even get into that when we do our UV mapping tutorial. I have a favorite I do to do, like, what I consider to be more superior PlayStation 1 sort of aesthetic texturing, but don't worry about that for now. We're just going to keep following along. And since it's his forearm, it probably gets a little lighter, right? It probably doesn't necessarily, probably gets a little smaller. Comes along the edge here. And we're going to go right here. I'm going to add another subdivision right here just because that's how I feel like an elbow works better like that. We're going to move all of this over. As I said before, like, if something's off model, you don't worry if it's like off model by pixels. You worry if it's off model otherwise. So, Armandez, topology, especially with organic models, is always better with quads. Because quads are always tries. I made a little thing here. So yeah, no matter what, if you make quads, they're going to become tries. That's just how a renderer looks at stuff. So like OpenGL, I took a fun class on OpenGL, and OpenGL is a nightmare to learn shaders on, but I would import all my fancy models into there. Basically what I find out is it would immediately triangulate all of my quads, and it would also do a very good job in it because no matter what, these always go into easy quads, and it'll always go into easy tries. What doesn't is Ngons. Ngons will fuck around and they won't know what to do and things will get messy. Tries are usually pretty good if you're doing hard surface or environmental modeling. It's not like better per se, but in the very sense that like, what's a good way to say it? Like, you know, that squares are always rectangles, but rectangles aren't always squares. Quads are always tries. And always good, while tries don't always form quads. And so if we're doing something, particularly something organic that will have a mesh that sort of moves around, we want it to be able to be a little more loose with its definition of where the model's going. This is definitely more for organic modeling than it is for static stuff and environmental and hard surface. But tries are just a little rigid in that sensibility, where this gives a little more guesswork, which is good. Guesswork is good in this circumstance. This is very limited guesswork. Yeah, generally you'll find that every 3D like character artist animator, they're gonna want you to do stuff in quads. All right. Anyways. Let's just keep doing this until we get to there, and then we're going to symmetrize again. And we're going to see how symmetrize is like a slightly better thing. Hands are a little funny. Typically for things with hands, and since I might be bringing this into our what's it called? Our class later on rigging, we're not going to be doing a full hand. We're going to be doing the standard mitten approach. We could maybe do like a funny little like this dealy Vulcan sort of thing, but we're not going to be articulating every finger, mostly because I want to make sure that class doesn't like last forever, and we're just gonna do a sort of basic hand mesh. So with what we have here, we can do that fairly simple. Again, remember when we're working with our wrists, doesn't hurt to extrude because it's a little motion spot. And then let's bring out this part. And if you remember this guy, what we can do, I should get in closer, sorry about that, is we can bring these down and bring him. Oh wait, there's an easier way to just move in here, sorry. And bring him a little bit further down. You see what I'm doing here? So we're kind of just making the quad we want. So now let's just extrude from any of these. You know, actually, God, it's being a little bit of a finicky jerk. We're just going to extrude from here, primarily because it's going to be easier for us to look it up later on in the mesh. And if it's like this, thumb's going to be towards the front. Extrude out. You know what? I don't even think we need to. I think we can actually extrude down. Extrude this way. we're just going to give Goku mittens for now. And if we want to give it more definition later on, we can do that easily by adding subdivisions. But Goku's getting mittens for now, mostly because we don't want to do too much extra work. That is, hands are, as in drawing, as in modeling, hands are a little bit more complicated. But if we do something simple like this, it'll look fine, and we can fix that up with texturing. All right, so now that we got this, and since sometimes extrusion is a little bit goofy when it comes to symmetrizing, let's go back into our edit, click our little guy, press A, mesh, symmetrize, and if you have it on the same thing, it should work just fine. The only thing we might have to go back in later on is make sure that there's no like loose vertices now, but we can do that with a simple cleanup tool. But as you can see, now we got him with his posture, with his back, and honestly, this again is like he's still a little bit tube man. It's fine. He can be a little tube man. We're probably going to push in the arm a little bit and make that look a little bit better. But his profile is starting to look pretty good, right? Like this isn't that far off. We're getting critical Goku points done. Head stuff. Again, we're doing basic modeling, so we're not doing a ton of head stuff. Believe you me, modeling faces is a whole different ballgame, especially for animation. Essentially, like you need to start knowing where the curvature points and the laugh lines and everything like that exist in your character. And we don't want to do that, especially for a character like this, like who is based on an animated property. Like you're not going to be worrying about how Goku frowns and whether or not his skin sort of moves in the right direction, right? That's not necessarily something that's going to come up for you. But what will come up potentially is just like how you're going to be setting his chin in and how you're going to be sort of making it so he can nod properly and little things that like do go a long way. But since we already set up our chest to kind of have multiple, what's it called? Extrusion points, we can actually just sort of pull in a little bit better. And then we can go down and slowly match his neck. Oh, I pressed the wrong thing. So we're going to use this because, you know, neck is going to probably go in a little bit there. And let's just slowly get to a point where it makes a little more sense. And yeah, let's keep messing with things, right? Never hurts to mess with things and slowly bring in that neck. And that looks about where his neck should probably be. There's a couple ways you can do the neck. Typically, I don't really fuss around too much when I make necks. Because again, that's a pretty complex point. And we're doing low poly modeling. We're not doing high poly modeling. We're doing stuff that kind of works as we later on sort of bring it into our jam games. We're not... I can't be the bossy. I don't know what you're putting in your games. But for low poly stuff, you don't need to do everything, right? You just need to do some. I wonder, we might even be at the point where I can show you all the power of adding multiple subdivisions. Let's just see. So let's go into our modifiers. Fun thing about low poly modeling is there are essentially cheat buttons. So if we go into this, in Maya, it's pretty much pressing 3. We go into, where is it? Looking for subdivision surface. Subdivision surface just adds subdivisions to your surface and sort of makes your low poly model look a little more clean. So we look at him, yeah, he already kind of looks, a little bit more smooth. We can add more to our viewport. We can make him super smooth, but we don't need to. We just do it later on if we want to make things look smoother on our model. and we can kind of mess with those vertices at that point, or we can bring this into a different program like ZBrush and properly sculpt within it, or I guess, yes, indeed Blender as well, you can sculpt with it. I don't sculpt in Blender, I like ZBrush a lot, but Blender is more than respectable at sculpting. I just probably wouldn't be the person to sort of give you a heads up on it. Anyways, going back into edit mode, let's do the neck, and let's sort of just get this done. I think this is slow. We're at like what? Almost at an hour and 30 minutes, which is pretty good for this model, honestly. I'm not too upset with how quickly this is going. But we're gonna do the same thing we did. We have our little neck point, and we're gonna extrude from here. We can actually, thankfully, see where the base of his neck goes. But what we're going to do is, because most people's necks sort of curve, we're going to take these two vertices and we're going to squish them in. Wow. Wait, I guess not. I thought we were going to squish them in. Squish them in. Why not? Why not squish them in? They should be... Oh, I see why. It's because we have Y symmetry on. So we can actually just take this, squish it in. We'll probably move some of these things, probably move everything back. You see how his neck kind of curves like that? Let's match that curve. Bring it up. We'll bring it up with each one of the verts too. Bring it up, and let's match his neck on this back profile. I think it'll do us all some good. Because I think the other good thing about this is we can also kind of, thanks to anime and a lot of these sharp lines, just sort of immediately figure out where things should be. And let's bring it up. Make sure that our mesh is still playing nice. It looks like this is a little lower for some reason. That's fine. What we'll do our other trick we did earlier. Remembering that we have to turn that on. Let's just make sure everything's flat. Good. And now let's bring it up. Again, what this does is it lets you select through your faces and normals and select the things behind it, which is a little frustrating and a little tricky at first, but once you kind of get used to it and know where things should be, it's going to save you a lot of time. So definitely worth getting very used to that. And as we said before, pivot points, things that move around, never hurts to add a subdivision. All right. Whew. So we've done a lot here so far. I think what we're going to do next is continue to work from this subdivision. To tell you the truth, I'm not great with heads. Usually I just kind of make something goofy, but what we're probably going to want to do is just make a slight subdivision here. So we're going to be matching that angle there, right? Take these guys and pull out his chin. And man, when we get to hair, I'm not thrilled. But let's look over here. And try to match it up here as well. Looks like his head goes down a little bit. We still have symmetry on, so we can pull out his neck. And we can pull down his chin. And we can pull these verts in. And let's just keep doing this until we start getting the shape we want. We have these ears here. Funny thing about Goku is we may actually not even do his scalp since he has so much hair. I'm going to show some models off in a little bit that sort of better show why that this is a thing you do. What is happening here? Let's make sure that this is all right. It looks like somewhere along the lines. Yeah, I see. It went below. That's fine. Okay. We'll just do it on both of these. So we'll bring everything down here. And then we'll try to match it again. And again, as we said before, don't worry if you're off model. You'll never always be on model. The only people who are on model all the time are weirdos and creeps. And you don't want to be a weirdo or a creep. You want to be like Goku. You just want to train all the time, presumably. But like at the same time, don't be like Goku, because like he trains and forgets he has children. So if you have children, be better than Goku. Well, his kids also save the world. I don't know. This is a complex discussion, not suited for learning 3D modeling. Personally, though, Goku could have been a better dad. Let's just get most of the details out. So now we can actually also see that models are differing here a little bit. I do like kind of keeping a little bit of this downward curve. Because it gives him this little, like, I don't know, it's quaint. He's got sort of chipper attitude with his chin. I don't know. One of the fun things I think about when you model is you get to see a lot of the intentionality of a lot of stuff like this. You get to sort of understand why things are made better, and sort of the emotional resonance that come with a lot of the artistic choices people make. Like, look at him. Look at his cute little overbite. It's great. We're going to be making a fairly simple head mesh. We're not going to be really doing, like, we might not even be making ears. We might just be leaving that with the mesh we add to it later. We just want to get Goku in here looking good. And yeah, follow his head shape roughly, but not perfectly. Looks like his head kinda goes up like this. With that said, like, this is also a perfect time for other people to diverge. If you feel like I'm doing something wrong and that your model would look better a different way, I am by no means a lord of modeling. I am but a precious little pauper, so I am assuredly often wrong, and would always be happy for criticism. Okay, good. So we kind of got the shape in here. This is also, again, assuming that we're not doing sort of facial animation beyond, like, changing the UV mesh and sort of doing things that way. Personally, I think for a small amount of time, it's going to look better. Keeping in mind, again, we're doing this for jams. We're not doing this for a larger project. It makes less sense for us to kind of build a face rig when we want to make something quick and make something a workhorse, because you guys are only going to have so much time when you work. That said, there are people way better than me who can teach you how to do face modeling, and I can probably make some links to that later on. I'm going to show some neat stuff after this, though. And since his nose has a little bit of a thing here, I think it doesn't hurt to add like a extra subdivision or two. When I was first learning low poly modeling, I got addicted to keeping things at a very low poly count. And they didn't do that back in the day. You'll see fairly shortly. And of course, that depends on what your definition of back in the day is. But for what I consider often a golden era of gaming, and that being like Dreamcast and PS2. Ooh, sorry about that burp. And stuff like that. Like, at least in terms of my favorite modeling, no, they weren't being super precious. They weren't going like crazy high poly like we do, but you know, there'd be goofy mess ups and strange like additional subdivisions there as well. So like, don't worry if things aren't necessarily efficient, because who cares? Stop caring. It'll do better for you in all parts of life if you just stop caring sometimes. Bring this down, and we're slowly getting there. Let's yeah, obviously we don't want his head to sort of do this funky business. Let's bring it in a little bit. Truth is, we're not even going to be seeing this part of his head, for the most part. We're going to give it one last sort of extrusion, and this will kind of be the last few bits we do with his head. And I'm going to show you why in a little bit. And I'm hoping these examples I have are still here. I didn't think we'd honestly get to this point today. But we're moving pretty quickly, and that's good. So Goku's head's a little bigger. Let's make sure this sort of follows the rhythm of his head. We'll once again go to our verts, pull it out, pull it down, go to these verts. The reason we're using these are just so we can also kind of top out his head in a more normal way. And all right, let's bring this down just a little bit. All right, so here we have a fairly, at least like within the posture and stance, we got a Goku, right? But you can't do Goku without the hair. Goku and his hair are synonymous. Apparently, it never changes since birth. I didn't know that until they told me in Dragon Ball Super. I'm gonna see if I still have a pretty great reference thing I made a while back, and I might even see if I can host it and show y'all as well. Modeler's Resource, a pretty cool thing that is online. I wonder if I have it here. So here's all of our crab ones. 1 second. I was gonna see. I know I have it saved under research. Here we are. All together. All right. This was I was making something for a separate game. You can see how much I hate doing heads over here, but like this was a higher poly sort of thing, and honestly, I still have to go back in and make that crack make a little more sense. But I was making something for a character creator essentially, and making a pretty much like a mannequin. You could put anything on here, and like yeah, there's a lot more definition in the feet here, and there's a lot more definition in the knees, and the legs, and stuff like that. But I thought little Goku would be a good sort of idea of how to do this. Anyways, so if we look at a lot of these models, what you're gonna see pretty quickly is, I think with Makoto, if we go to edit Makoto, we can lift her hair, and we're gonna turn on soft selection. Her hair is not attached. It's just straight up not a part of her mesh. The very top of her hair is not in that model. Never was connected to things. It's just a different thing. It's sort of kit bashed into there. It might be a part of just where I got this model researching stuff, but I've seen this in a lot of models is kind of like, you don't fuse the hair to the model you would a lot of other things. You kind of what they call kit bash it, and that is you sort of make separate things that you then add into the model, and then make sure that like, you know, it's just a part of the mesh once you go through. Like the organic parts of the model should usually be connected. And keep in mind, part of the problem here, of course, is that this is a janky thing I got off the internet. But yeah, here again, you can actually see the scalp division, right? You can see kind of where things are falling apart, where things were connected and where things weren't connected. And like his headband is not necessarily going to be fused to his scalp the same way. For the most part, when you see scalps in models like this, they're going to be like this little like semicircle in the back that aren't necessarily properly connected, right? You can see it here, huh? I don't know what game this was. It was like some PS2 RPG, but I wanted to see how like somebody with very little clothing was kind of done. Additionally, when we were talking earlier about quads versus tris, you can see that he is indeed made of tris, but that's because he's ripped straight from the renderer. But you can also see how many quads he has, especially in his sort of like lattice points in here, things where he moves around. That's important that he has quads there. While things like his sunglasses, these are a lot less defined. They still have quads, as you can tell. But like the quads and the grouping isn't as important. But whole point of this was to basically show you, like, yeah, don't worry about a lot of how you do hair. You do hair separately, and you have fun with the hair. Hair is when you still kind of do things with quads, but like you're extruding out. You're making things less organic, less symmetrical, and less sort of like attached to your model. So it's practically like a separate object that then you connect and add later on. But yeah, other than that, like, I thought this was pretty cool. I don't know. You can actually see when renderers sort of started doing stuff with tris differently. Like the model here for Gum and the model here for Ulala is a little more conscientious about how they're using their tris and how they're using their quads than if we go into Makoto here, who is like straight up, like up and down, just great poly grouping, goes all the way. They don't give a shit about how many like quads they have for any particular thing. God, look at those feet, which is very important. If you ever play any Street Fighter game, Makoto's feet, they smack you. But you'll see that, like, yeah, that sort of poly grouping is definitely expected in sort of later generations. While, like, initial generations like this, it's a little less important. And what we have here is a very simple rig I put in. If you want to see something coming up later on, pose mode is really cool. You can move all your models around in pose mode. That's later. Don't worry about it. But at one point, you will hopefully learn how this stuff works. Well, you will. That'll be my next... In 2 classes, you'll be learning that. Anyways, get back to our guy. As I said, like, we did this, and hopefully you did this, pretty much to, like, know that you could do it and have a nice little mostly finished guy here, who's still a little tubey and still a little blocky, but don't worry about that. You can always go in and make sort of edits to make him less blocky. But to know that, like, when you're going to go in and do Goku's hair, you ain't even using this shit. It's going away. You don't need this. All of that doesn't matter. It's impartial to your model final because you're going to have a separate mesh for the hair that goes on top of it. It's not going to be fused to these points. In the meantime... and I think, like, I don't want to keep going too much further. I think this is a pretty decent stopping point. Let's just, like, go in and see what's weird on our model. And obviously there are things that, like, will stick out. These arms, for instance, like, that's not how arms look. So we can extend those polygons. We can bring these ones in further. We can do that and just sort of slowly make arms look more like arms, right? Less like weird tubes. But it's just sort of stuff that you don't have to do immediately. But once you have like a good block out and a good sort of initial pose, this sort of part of modeling goes pretty quickly because you're just sort of finding the things that don't make sense and you're making them make sense. And that's like kind of the stuff where I feel like you often will learn a lot of your fun tricks is personally just going through these, finding the tiny things, bringing them in, and just sort of making everything work a little bit better. And already we can see this arm makes a lot more sense. Let's bring that in, and we could bring these in, and let's see. Since his thumb's a little flat, you know, why don't we just bring that down? Who knows? And we'll bring that in. Even if it is a mitten, you know, we can probably make the mitten a little better. And since we have symmetry on, it's getting done on the other side, and that's good. But you get it, like, he starts to look more like an actual shape when we start doing that. We can take these little blocks here, make it a little bit more of a natural sort of progression from his chest. Sort of bring him in, there we go. His chest still puffs out, I like that. But we have our model as reference here. We still have these things on the side that we can look back at and be like, huh, you know, maybe it puffs out a little bit higher up, and we can move these up and we can move these down, and we can sort of start to get that little look a little bit better. And he looks a lot more like Gohan, honestly, right now. We can move these in, and you'll sort of see, right? You'll be able to see points that make more sense anatomically to look differently, and you'll be able to kind of get that insight as you kind of come back to your model after doing this approach, this sort of, I guess, reference approach to making a model. I don't know if this is what I did the last time I did the class. I might have just taught to do simple, like, literally matching geometry and blockouts, but I find this to be superior, honestly. I think this is a way better way to learn, and eventually, like, you won't need this. This is mostly here to, like, help you get a better idea of how to make things sort of make sense in 3D space, to kind of get those sea legs broken in. So once you kind of get better at modeling, you can feel a little bit more comfortable in just sort of knowing where things should be in 3D space when you bring it into a program like this. And a lot of that is just literally like looking for things that look very flat. Like, he probably has a little bit more of a burst in there, a little bit more like that. His legs don't have to be like this rigid. So let's like puff him out just a little bit. Another thing we can do, this is the soft selection tool, essentially. It has a different name in Blender, but it's essentially a soft selection tool. When you move something in the soft selection tool, it moves everything within this radius. You can see this tiny circle I'm kind of moving up and down. It might be difficult to see. If you hold a vertice and you move the scroll wheel, you'll be able to move every vertice within a certain radius of that. And it'll kind of just like, if you want to make a sort of rhythmic change within your model, you can move that around. And you can kind of really address sort of flat points pretty well with that. Because it'll move other points that are nearby as well, depending on your drop-off settings, which you can mess around with your middle mouse button and with how this works. There's like root, sphere, etc. So if I put this down here, bring it in, yeah, we'll start to sort of see better definition within our Goku, right? And still got a flat butt. We'll fix that. But as you can see, he takes far better shape now than he did before. He looks way more natural. He looks like that profile to me actually just straight up kind of looks like Goku. If we move this out of the way, like there is a Saiyan in that profile to me, which is pretty neat. Normally, if it wasn't already like almost 2 hours in, I would say it should be a good time to go into the hair. But I think this might be a decent stopping point. I'm actually my throat's starting to get dry. So if you guys are interested in sort of following along, and if you came here and you weren't part of our jam, I'm going to post in chat and potentially, let me see if I can make it on stream, where you can go to learn more about what we're doing. I'm working with the New Orleans game dev community. As you can see here in our chat, I think we have links to our Discord within our About. This is with the CK Blueberry Jam. You can ask our chatbot, I think. And I think, for the most part, that should do it. I will make sure that these get documented. I'll probably end up doing something with our little Goku here, but yeah. This for the most part is sort of how I would first approach modeling if I was just learning. This is a model you can bring into things fairly easily. He does, I mean, like I mess around with these feet, you know. There's 1,000 things I would fine tune on this before like saying it's a done product, but for the most part, it's good. That said, just to make sure we get everything done, dot all our I's, cross all our T's, whatever, let's go in and do the things that I kind of would do just to bake a model before I hand it off into somebody else. So we're going to click our last model first. Let's label our model in the hierarchy, call him Goku. Press tab, go into edit mode, edit. First, let's go into mesh, symmetrize. Looks like it's pretty much symmetrized, right? We did it before, but we just want to make sure. Okay, good. Now we go into mesh, clean up, fill holes. We're just kind of gonna go down the spectrum here of like things that could go wrong, and that's in our Goku. Remember, sometimes I think this thing has a mind of its own. Okay, so Goku, mesh, press A to select everything once again, clean up, let's fill holes. Looks like everything's fine. Mesh, clean up, merge by distance. And this is something that you want to do because sometimes when you end up doing symmetrize, it'll just end up putting two things right next to each other. You just keep kind of clicking this until you start seeing stuff that you don't want to merge merging together. So I think roughly around 0.301 should be fine to make sure that everything's connected correctly. Let's go inside of our model and just make sure that like there's no random duplicate normals here. These are all normals. We can see that there's like a little bit of intrusion over here on the arm. That's fine. It's not necessarily something that's going to like break the model or anything like that. Models often go inside of themselves. It's okay. But I think for the most part, we got our little Goku profile here. And yeah, I think this will do for now. For all of you who are watching, thank you for watching. It's been my pleasure. But this will be in the VODs fairly soon. I don't know why I would be telling you, because if you are watching this, you would know that the VODs are here. And yeah, that's a Goku for you. If you have any questions, comments, etc., feel free to tell us on the Discord and the Sea Cave Cranberry Jam, or Sea Cave Blueberry Jam, and it's actually just the Sea Cave Jam channel. I am Crawl Door in the Discord. I'm one of the organizers. I'll be right at the top of the list. But I think that is pretty much what I want to leave y'all with. If there's any questions, ask me now, actually, within the chat. And I can try to answer it before, signing off. It's been a pleasure. Always happy to help out. And I definitely encourage some of you, if you have the time, to attend in person for the next two ones. As much as like 3D modeling in low poly sense, like just sort of eventually works, like things don't mess up as much. There is a lot more frustration when it comes to UV mapping and rigging, and it'll be useful to kind of ask questions in that sort of a situation because things can go wrong. Before I go, I just want to do my normal little silly outro setup, but we can probably use the same model we have here when we go into our next classes. I will probably end up putting that on my Dropbox as well to give to everyone. Again, if you want our side Gokus, that's within our Discord. I have a link to all the side Gokus. It should be within the what's it called? The Sea Cave Jam channel. But yeah, other than that, it's been a pleasure, y'all. Thanks for tuning in, and good night.